Welcome to the Secrets Women Keep podcast. I am your secret keeper and confidant, Lauren White. I'm a qualified counsellor and sexologist, facilitator of all things turn on, author of Permission, and a witty, highly intuitive lounge room dancing introvert. I help you as an exceptional woman in entrepreneurship to see, love, and trust all the parts of yourself, especially the unseen. Let's pull back the curtain, light the candelabra, and lift the veil. These are the secrets women keep. Hello, and welcome to the Secrets Women Keep. I am your host and confidant, Lauren White, and today we have a truly mystical guest. Her name is Colette Davenport. Colette is an illustrious metaphysician and muse to CEOs, celebrities, artists, and athletes on the verge of greatness. As a creator of the Davenport Method for Identity Enhancement, Colette believes anyone can become the person beyond their wildest dreams. Her mission is simple: live the dream and lead the way. She is potent, she is powerful, and her story will stay with you. Colette, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Lauren. This is going to be great, girl. I've got chills already. Looking forward to
it. Yes. Now, we haven't known each other that long, have we? But we
have.
We're a relatively fresh connection, but it's always for the last 3 months, it's felt very easy connecting with you. And we definitely have some overlap in terms of the history of our work, which we will illuminate in mere minutes for listeners. But with me being a sexologist, I always appreciate meeting other people doing incredible, revolutionary work at a premium and luxury level when it comes to exploring sensuality and sexuality. And I love a meeting of the minds with people that have some overlap but a different journey to me in the world of sex and sexuality, because I feel like we can just speak a similar language and drop into that quite quickly. So I am very excited about speaking with you today.
Well, and that, to your point, I've been interviewed and, all kinds of on the radio and all the things, right? And I have in the past found myself having to explain and bring people sort of up to speed around what it means to do the work that you and I do. And also you mentioned, this luxury level, this iconic level of clientele that we work with and the type of work that we bring to the table. And that's another thing that is it's emerging for me because, again, historically, it's been sort of that lower to mid-tier level providership and all of these things that I always knew, like, I'm either going to lead that troop or I need to evolve way beyond it and start my own new thing. So being in your presence feels like I'm home right now.
Yes. Yeah. I am so with you on that. And it's fascinating, the issues of money and sex that can come up. I was speaking with and what level the offers are at. I was speaking to someone I met recently who's just started her journey into somatic sexology and body work. And she was just getting so anxious. It was just a casual conversation. She's not a client of mine. She was just getting so would people pay $100? Would they pay $200 for this session? And I just gave her the biggest pep talk about that because it was like looking at myself 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember having a phone call, back when I did things the very old school way, but receiving a phone call from someone and they said, "You are so expensive." And I think my prices were like $150 for a session or something. And I am always here for a conversation about money and abundance, and I'm always here for a conversation about how money and abundance can interweave with sexuality and sensuality as well. So to be at this luxury level that we're both at is feels like a breath of fresh air, because there is a lot of money stuff intertwined with sex, and that goes for people who charge for their services and how open people are to receiving sex and receiving money. I'm not sure if you have I'm sure you have some insights on that. So if you do, please feel free to share them.
Well, yeah, I knew before I knew that sex and money were the exact same energy, manifested in two different forms. But if we're blocked in our sexual expression, then our financial expression isn't what it could be either, and vice versa. So, when I look at what that looks like tangibly, I'll speak for myself. When I had a block in my business, and this was after I was done with the sex working and I started a quote unquote legit career in real estate, and just things were difficult for me, and that was sort of honestly one of the first times that I had difficulty in creating. And I recognized through the help of a coach, much later into the process, that my block in business was because I sort of had this belief about myself as this, like, who am I to be, who's going to respect and trust me to help them? I was in real estate. Who's going to respect and help me trust them with such a significant life decision and purchase?
Yeah.
Considering I was a call girl for 10 years.
Yeah.
That was all internal. Like, I never said any of that. And people didn't necessarily know that hired me as their agent, but I had that shit going on internally. And so one of the things that I realized, like I said, through the help of a coach, that I knew way back before I knew was that the sexual energy and the money energy are the same energy. And so when I had that block in business and I could look at, this is a belief about myself and my worth, and how that was actually impacting my relationship at the time as well. And that started the downward spiral and demise of my relationship as well. It was a big, big transformational period in my life. So I imagine we might talk a little bit about that as we go on. But yeah, sex and money, same energy.
Yes. Okay. Sex and money, same energy. Yes. Okay. We will, I have no doubts that we will come back to this. Your story is profound. I was engrossed in your story when I took it in full in preparation for us speaking together today. To give listeners a little bit of a synopsis, you were high school valedictorian. You're a classic, what I call good girl, smart girl, got to be the best girl. You were on an academic scholarship to university or college, and you drop out to become a call girl. You wrote that you decided to make ridiculous amounts of money, explore your sexuality, and feel in control of your body and life. Can you share with us what you learned about yourself? Just what your soul wounds were, because you identified that there were some soul wounds behind that decision. And just looking back now, these years later, what that was all like for you and what you learned from it.
Yeah. So at the time, I was completely ignorant around the motivation for that. It just felt like fun. It felt like freedom. It felt like power, to sort of two middle fingers to the academic path that I was sort of raised to follow, right? That was expected of me. And here I was out in the world for the first time, coming from a sheltered upbringing, not religious, but definitely my dad was like very strict. And I recognized he was just trying to keep his daughter safe. But I'm this free-spirited, wild, rebellious, curious person by nature. So anything that doesn't support that felt like confinement and control to me. So here I am out in the world for the first time. I discover boys, I discover booze, and I just go all in on, who am I? What do I want? What am I capable of in a completely different direction than the academic path that I was pursuing. So it felt like power. But in hindsight, what I recognized it was that soul desire within me, the urge that I can't put my finger on, right? To know myself. And so one thing I have always done, Lauren, is follow the urge, right?
Oh, the word urge has been missing from my life. Where's it gone? Thank you for bringing it back. Please keep going. Urge. Yes. Yeah,
the urge. And I'll tell you this, it's very rarely sensical and rational and reasonable. But it has always led me to deeper and deeper levels of satisfaction. Okay. I'm blessed with intelligence and that curiosity. And I say that without any vanity. I'm blessed with the ability to discern and to understand very nuanced things. So being an empath, right? The ability to sort of sense other people's energy and emotions and truth has allowed me to follow those risky urges, if you will, and remain safe. Now, was remaining safe a top priority of mine? No, but there's that. I believe that there is when we not blindly follow the urge, but cooperative with the urge, cooperate with that desire within ourselves, that we will always be taken care of. Right? Not going to lead us into some, shady situations.
Yes. What I appreciate about what you're saying is that it's not you blindly following the urge, it's you co-creating with the urge.
Yes.
And which is when we're at our most powerful, not just there's a leader out there, I'm going to follow it. There's a thing out there, I'm going to pursue it. There's a two-way flow happening. That's what I'm feeling and receiving from what you're saying. Is that what you're tapping into?
I love that articulation. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is so much more powerful than just the blind follow. And I feel like I think we have similar gifts, just hearing what your gifts are. And please be vain, by the way. Please be arrogant. Please be audacious enough to say, these are my fucking super skills. This is what I excel at. Please go there, Colette, because these are the secrets that people want to tap into. And it is as simple as, rather than looking out there and saying, who can influence me? What can I follow? What should I do next? This is a matter of going inward and going, wait a minute, what do I desire? Where's the urge from within? Where does the curiosity want to take me? And when I'm led by that curiosity, how can I keep playing with it? How can I keep co-creating with it? And I feel like that's the secret that makes women so powerful. And so many women don't realize that when they're stuck in the old alpha ways of like, I have to fall in line, I have to follow suit. This is what I should do. This is what everyone else is doing. I need to fit in. And it's like, You don't need to fit in. You need to belong to yourself. And what you're saying right now is very much in the theme, in the, really exalting that belonging to yourself and being in co-creation with the bigger picture. I love this.
And to your exact point, had I allowed myself to fit in and follow the formula laid out for me, right? I would have stayed on the academic path. I would have made my dad really proud. And this isn't about my dad, but I would have done that instead of truly exploring who I am and what I am here to create in the world. Mm-hmm. And so being that curious, empathic, intuitive, tuned in person that I am, working as a call girl, what I learned really quick was, while there were a few people who were there for the physical transaction of it all, the majority of the people who hired me, both men and women, were there for intimacy. In other words, being heard, being held, having someone of this curious nature ask questions, not project accusations, but truly be interested in who they are and have that loving, open-hearted, open-minded presence with them. So, so like I playfully say, I was like the hooker with the heart of gold, or like more along the lines of a courtesan than
courtesan. Yes.
Yeah.
I love the term courtesan. I love it.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty sure I was one in a past life, but yeah. And so what I learned really quickly, and I was in my early mid 20s, and then I started to develop my myself, my personality, my like who I want to be after the party girl and all of the things, like got her stuff out. Then it was starting to get a little bit more serious, a little bit more curious about more than just my own pleasure. And so that inquiry led me to studying things like the tantric philosophy, and it eventually led to me becoming an intimacy coach. Mm-hmm. Again, this is after in my early 30s by this time, right? Because it was a decade of doing that and exploring that pleasure and philosophy and, just who I am and what I want to do and things of that nature. And, living a really, really, really free life on my terms. It was about a decade. So in my early 30s now, I am starting to get serious, quote unquote. I'm doing quote fingers. Yeah. And because I really wanted to facilitate the same thing I did in my 20s, but above board and in a way that I could, tell my boyfriend's parents about. And, and again, this was I'll get to what your question was in a moment, but like my inner conversation, my inner belief about myself, my identity, who I saw myself to be, was not respectable, among other things. Mm-hmm. And so I really had this urge, this desire, this drive to be respectable and be able to talk about what I know and what I do and who I help and why in a way that made sense to other people, and in a way that I could, just bring everything out in the open, so to speak, because for the longest time, it felt like I had to kind of keep things hush hush.
Yes.
And I don't like hush hush. I like say it out loud. You know what I mean? So there was some lack of integrity there for me, but it all came to, it all wove together just beautifully. And so there, along the way, one of the things in my work as an intimacy coach and philosopher, one of the things that I came to recognize, and this was, again, through the help of a coach. I've hired coaches all along my journey, and I have a coach now. I have 2 coaches now for different areas of my life. And this person helped me to uncover the very specific, very unique, and I'll be real honest, very fucking cruel wound that was the belief, the identity, the who I think I am. And the uncovering of that, Lauren, was the key that allowed me to create a whole new identity for myself. And yes, one that the world could see, but the one that I could stand in confidently, whether the world knew it or not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
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 And so that, him helping me to do that, and it was in the context of business and branding, quite frankly, right? Like, who are you? Who's your brand? What do you hear? Like that kind of stuff. But the uncovering of that, totally changed my body of work. And from there, the Davenport Method, what I use to actually heal that wound, was born. And I had to birth that process myself, because all of the the therapy that I'd been in and the books that I read, and the yoga teacher certification and the energy healer certification and all these things that I did, they all helped, but nothing was like a full expression that allowed me to truly know and be able to say the words, I am healed.
Yes.
Right. Versus I'm healing, which a lot of us are in that place. And, and I don't think there's necessarily like, oh, you've reached the finish line, now the rest of your life is enlightened. No, but if we can no longer identify as that wounded self, that wounded soul, if we can identify as our true self, then, what we create from there is, well, we create in a state of grace, and the creation itself is graceful.
And the reason why I already know without a shadow of a doubt that you excel at what you do is because of the integration that's taken place and the tenacity that you have to have in order to face up to that healing process. It's not about, as much as I want to, I'm in total reverence of everything that you've done in terms of qualifications, and I can already tell just listening to you that your work is powerful because of you continually showing up to that healing process. Can you share with listeners because I haven't mentioned this part yet, but how your brainstem tumor was a pivotal part of your healing process, and what did it represent for you, just looking back on it now?
Yeah. So I have it's about the size of a lime. It's on the nerve that goes from my brainstem to my tongue. But you can see it sort of jutting out underneath my jaw a little bit. And it's benign, so I'm totally healthy and fine, and it's being monitored for any changes. It's been a part of my life since 2008. And that was, it showed up, Lauren, within months after breaking up with my fiance. So I was at another transitional, talk about like continuous personal evolution. Like there's a reason I do this for work. It's because it's my life, literally. Yeah. Right. And so I was in another life transition and answering the question, who am I? Who am I now? Now what? Right. And, and so then this tumor shows up, and it was much smaller at the time. It's grown to this size, but it hasn't grown for about 7 or 8 years. So, but early on, it had me, and at that point in time, 2008, I was sort of fresh in the, the development of my being. Gosh, let me say that in a different way. I was just getting into spiritual development. I was just getting into, like, I'd had a coach for a couple of years, but I was just getting into the like real implementation of the work. And the tumor shows up. And so it was like, I could no longer just, scratch the surface or, dial it in terms of doing the work. Like I had to face myself. I was confronted now physically. Forget about the emotional, psychological stuff that I was quote unquote working on. Right. I was confronted with a physical situation. And I mean, I pursued the medical route and had doctors, had surgery and everything else. And they decided to leave it there because taking it out would have paralyzed my tongue. on the right side, just, killing that motor nerve. So they decided to leave it there, which I'm so glad they did, because, chewing and eating food and speaking and making out are like my favorite things in the whole wide world. And I would have to learn to do that stuff again, which is fine. But if I don't have to, if it's just cosmetic now and I'm completely asymptomatic, then I'd rather live with the lump, honestly.
Yes. Yeah.
And the lump, which I playfully call lumpy,
is lumpy.
I mean, has taught me who I really am.
Yes.
I am not my body.
Yes.
I made a living on my looks, Lauren, for the longest time. And although I wasn't doing that anymore, I still had that sort of, program in me that my value was based on the way that I looked, or being desirable, being sexy, being this or that. And lumpy called all that into question, because when I looked in the mirror, I did not see sexy. And it took, and that was what led me to, like I said, bringing all of the work that I had done and diving even more deeply into that spiritual self-healing, philosophical place, and weaving it all together in the way that made sense for me. And at the time, I wasn't trying to create a method to help people heal themselves at a soul level. I was just trying to fucking save my own mind, and live and be happy. But that's where my method was born from, was the necessity from this brainstem tumor, and really not liking what I saw in the mirror and having to reconcile that if I truly wanted to be happy.
Ooh. And are you happy now?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yes. And like I my whole body is lit up right now, and then just chills and yeah, my default setting is happy. Now, am I happy of every moment, every day? Hell no, I'm human, right? But I get myself back to center, really rapidly, like really rapidly. Whether that's, being broken up with, and a week later, broken down on the floor of my bedroom, wailing in tears, which happened at the end of March, to a week later, like remembering who the hell I am.
Oh, yes. Yes. Remember who the fuck you are. Remember.
Yeah,
exactly. Excellent.
Exactly.
I love that.
And having compassion for that, and for that grief.
Yes.
But not just staying broken down on the bedroom floor, like getting myself back to center, back to truth, back to who I truly am, back to creating what I desire, because I know I can.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we all can. But so real world. Yeah. It's not fucking rainbows and butterflies every day. But boy, oh boy, is the breakdown like a fraction of what it used to be when life was.
Yes. I've noticed this too as I get older and wiser. And it's something that I put up on, just popped it up in an Instagram story recently, because it occurred to me. It was like, oh, I don't require the breakdown anymore. Like, I'm finally, like, it will happen again. I've got no doubt about it. But the way that I experience breakthroughs now is I don't have to go as dark as I used to go. It's almost like I go, whoop, this is familiar. What is required from here? And I just bring, the toolkit is so much more refined. And I'm hearing a similar experience from you. Like, the shit is still going to happen, but because we know what we know, and we've done so much personal and professional work, it doesn't have to get to that darkest place, because we can still release and feel our sadness and our anger and our grief, but it doesn't have to be this protracted experience that takes over our whole life. It's like within a short period of time, we are more efficient and go, right, boom, what needs to be done? How can I get back to belonging to myself, remembering who the fuck I am, going into my power and going back to creation rather than, and in the past, what might have been destruction.
Yeah, precisely. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that about getting older. I love how old I am now. I just would not, the number doesn't matter, but I love being in this. I love this phase of womanhood. I don't want it to end. I love the refinement that has occurred from all the experiences of 20s and 30s. It's just, I wouldn't exchange it for being younger in any way, shape or form. I'm not sure. How do you feel about age and maturity?
Yeah, I feel like as I mature, my body reverses in time. Because I become more and more attuned with, the secret of life.
Yeah.
And I live it. I live in more alignment with that rather than letting sort of habits and old ways of being, refute that secret. So I feel like as I get wiser, I get more tuned in, and therefore my body gets younger, more beautiful, and more vital. And this feels more natural to me than like, oh, you age, you get older, your body breaks down. Well, fuck, not in my experience.
Yeah, not my watch. Like that's part of that is a decision to not maintain and not preserve and not enhance what is already supple or operational or, is functional. That part of that is a decision. It's a mindset that getting older equals breaking down, like body breaking down. Oh, right. And I was just like, no, I refuse to believe that. I'll do everything in my power to preserve what is right now and enhance it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's just the thing, right? Like we can, and in my experience, like just because it's a sort of a minority belief that we can, it doesn't make it untrue. And so I'm okay living in, what some people, my friends included, might call like a fantasy world. I prefer the fantasy world. I am, like I said, happy most of the time in the fantasy world and not doing the same shit I was doing in my 30s, like a lot of my friends are, or just so focused on what is happening outside of them that they have no control of, and reacting and responding and to those things, whether that's a breakup or, trying a boss that's like not giving a raise or whatever they've got going on, and they're bitching and moaning about, and I say that lovingly, of course, but whatever they're bitching and moaning about, like if that's reality, I will take my fantasy world.
Yeah, agree. I will take my fantasy world, which is very rich, and I will run with that.
Well, yeah.
And my question always is, how can I bring my fantasy world into reality? And that's where I'm going with my business and brand at the moment is like, wait a minute, why does it have to stay stuck in a tiny little portion of my brain? How can I make this tangible and material and bring other women on for the ride as well? Because if I fantasize about it, then I know I'm not alone. But I know without a shadow of a doubt, it's on me to take what's in my fantasy world and put it into a sensory experience for other women. I know that I've been chosen to do that, so I'm going to do it. But I love my we don't have to be in reality all the time. We don't have to be. It's no way. It's our fantasy world is incredibly, if we allow it, is incredibly influential on our reality. And fuck, why not? Why not? Yeah. And I think to your point, Lauren, in the question, like, how do I bring it from a corner of my mind, something that I just have for me, in my silent time into an actual tangible world? And I think the first thing is talking about it the way that we are right here, right now. Yes.
Talking about what that desire is, what that life looks like, what, some ways like hiring you or working with me or other people that are similar in the ways that we bring desires into being, the way that we take fantasies and turn them into reality. And I think that the talking of in the presence of someone who believes that it's possible is paramount.
Yes.
And then the other part of that too, so speaking it into being, number one, in the listening of someone who believes in the possibility of it. And then number two is shutting that bitch up in our head that is like, yeah, right. When she does surface. So I call her, that's what I talk about when I talk about the soul wound, is that identity that is wounded from childhood and stuff, and has that whispery but sometimes loud in your ear voice that likes to keep you confined, like my dad with his best interest at heart, trying to keep me safe, but don't go be risky. That voice in our heads that we all have is lovingly shutting her up.
Yeah.
So I think those are the two things: is speaking it out loud in the listening of somebody who sees the possibility and beyond, and then also lovingly silencing the negative voice in our head. I think those are two components to bringing the fantasy world into the real, tangible world that other people can play in.
Yeah, agreed. I would love to ask you, Colette, if we have time, I would love to ask you about Tantra.
Yeah.
Okay, because I have a confession, this being the secrets women keep. In my book, Permission, which I wrote in 2018, I have a chapter called, every chapter was titled Permission to. And one of the chapters is Permission to Love Vanilla. And the reason why I wrote that chapter, which I think is probably the climax of the book, I strategically positioned it in the middle. So it was a bit like an orgasmic wave that we then come down from. The reason why I wrote that is at the time I was feeling quite jaded about Tantra. I was, and this is on me and I'm in full ownership of it. It wasn't Tantra per se, but it was the people that were that I could see that were involved in Tantra. And I was seeing a lot of people out of integrity. That's all. And for anyone listening that's going, what the fuck is she talking about? Unfortunately, in the world of sexuality, it can, and sexual healing, it can attract a lot of predatory behavior. And unfortunately, I'd been through some interesting experiences. That's for another podcast, another time. That is a whole hour-long plus podcast in itself. I was just a little bit done with feeling a sense of pressure that I needed to go deeper. And for me, what I'd been through is so much exploration that I forgot about the simplicity of just rubbing a clitoral orgasm out. Like I became so detached from like the simple pleasure of like subtracting everything and just going, actually, I'm just going to grab my vibrator. Like I was like, no vibrators. And like, anyway, I went deep into different kinds of somatic into somatic sexology, and I love that. I would never exchange it for anything, but I was a little bit like, hey, can we all just come back to what works and what's simple and what gets us off? But I no longer feel that way. It's a reflection of how I felt at the time. I think there's lots of space for everything, and we can develop a really beautiful toolkit. I would love to know, because I haven't thought deeply about Tantra for a long time. I'd love to know, just what's it being 2022 now, what's your take on what Tantra is and what it can add, in modern day life, especially for women who are high power women?
Mm-hmm. Well, to your point, Lauren, I think it's important to recognize, I certainly stand for this, that Tantra is not about sex or orgasm or withholding orgasm. The Tantra is a spiritual philosophy that essentially it weaves together what we perceive as the separation between self, source, and other, right? So it's the path to one, from two or three, right? If I'm talking about myself and my partner and God, or this seeming separation between all of that into the singularity of that. So for me, and sex is or can be an included experience in that. And so the experience of that oneness through our everyday life, which includes or can include sex with another person, sex with ourselves, it doesn't matter. So for me, it's really important. And you're right. A lot of people don't even, I don't know that or care about that, or it's just like, this is a buzzword for some, taboo sexual stuff. So let's capitalize on that. And that for me is part of the reason why for so many years, I just was not like, I just stepped away from all that because I was really sick of fucking explaining to people who actually did not want to know what Tantra really is. So they weren't in it for this sort of spiritual satisfaction. They were in it for some like exotic sexual experience that then left them seeking and searching and reaching and yearning for something that they weren't getting or couldn't sustain. And that in and of itself isn't Tantra. So it's, so that's my, I'm kind of passionate about that. I'm like, motherfuckers, you got it wrong. Stop talking about it like that.
Yes.
And so just don't talk about it if you're going to call it, if that's what you're going to talk about anyway. So, but I also, like I said, I didn't want to fight battles and convince people that felt like what, I don't know, religions do. Like, no, here's the only way, and here's the only way to interpret this and stuff. And that's not what I'm here to do.
Yeah. Agreed. That's very mainstream behavior as well. It's like convincing people and consistently feeling like you have to educate and bring people up to speed. It is exhausting, and it takes us out of our power and out of our magnetism. There's so much. There's so much that doesn't need to be said in that way of convincing, bringing up to speed, educating, clarifying. Oh, it's just so exhausting when you've done it before. It's just like,
it is. And especially if you're doing it in the field of spirituality or intimacy or sexuality.
Sexuality is just, I just got exhausted. Yeah.
Because these are things, Lauren, that we can only come to truly understand through our own experience, right? Our own quote unquote trial and error, our own seeking of understanding. And while it absolutely is supportive to have a guide, right? It's kind of like the guide is in the passenger seat with the map while the individual is driving on their journey, on their path. So it's helpful to have a map holder in your front seat with you. Before you had navigation and all that. But anyway.
I just have the sweetest visual right now of someone sitting there with this, one of those foldable maps. I love it. Analog. I love it.
Well, I'll take it a step further, and we're in like a vintage sports car traversing the countryside in Europe, looking for that sweet, sweet wine that we have heard of that was like some place where you go and you just chill and become, all that you are in that moment. And it's bliss and it's heaven. So, so it helps to have a map holder in your passenger seat while you're driving on that journey. But so Tantra, like I said, Tantra for me it's that center point that is almost indescribable, other than I like to think of it as the singularity, right? It's the source of all life. It's the source of our desire. It's the source of quite frankly, our pain, fear, and frustration as well. It's the source of everything. And so if we can recognize and accept that is at essentially who we are, and that we then have we've got these beautiful bodies with all these senses and this world filled with all kinds of shit to enjoy. So if we can recognize that we are and be that center point, that singularity, that essential nature, then we can enjoy our bodies, whether it's quick, rubbing one out with the vibrator or some like hours long,
Yes.
breathing energy, fucking transformative encounter. Like, it doesn't matter. It could be washing the damn dishes and having having that experience be blissful. And so many of our friends are just like, yeah, I don't know how you do that. And I'm like, well, I've dedicated my entire life, not through work or effort. It's just who I was born and made to be, to examine, this, who I am, and experiment with that philosophy. So that's just how I live my life, A. And then B, I just stopped seeking, searching, and thinking, you said this earlier, that somebody else outside of me is going to tell me like what to do. So tuning my attention, I think this is maybe the simple way I can say this, is putting my attention on the still point within myself and letting that be enough. And then from that enoughness, live my best damn life. And whatever that is for me. And sometimes it's not pretty, but mostly it's fucking awesome.
Fuck yes. I think that is the perfect point to complete our conversation on. I just fuck yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes. My favorite word. Yes. I'm doing it. I did a little clap. That means I'm in my excitement. God, I have loved having you on the podcast. I actually have so many more questions for you, but we will have to leave it there. And I hope and I trust that with our continued connection, I think I might be able to, maybe we could continue that conversation behind closed velvet curtains. I am so grateful to you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I am wondering, where can people find you?
Yeah, they can find me at ColetteDavenport.com, and then any of the various social media channels, just Colette Davenport, and that's COLETTE. So one L in Colette.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. We will put all of your links in the show notes so that people can find you and explore you and work out how to play with you. And just so grateful to you. And I've had a lot of fun today really going there with you as a mystical muse and talking more about Tantra. Thank you. Thank you for your beautiful insights. And I have no doubt that listeners will start to see and experience that concept as something so much more holistic than and beyond sex and what happens in the bedroom. So thank you for that gift.
Yeah, my pleasure. I love having these conversations. And I think we talked about this earlier, like speaking these words to the ears and the hearts and the minds of someone who is genuinely curious is where the magic happens. So thank you, Lauren, for being the hostess to this conversation. It's the magic is already happening, girl.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you for your words. It is an absolute pleasure. And these conversations I'm having are reminding me why I love podcasting and why it's not going anywhere. Like, I have my moments of like, and then I get back on the mic with incredible, to use your term, like icons of intimacy, like, and powerhouses. And I'm like, yes, this is why we do it, because the impact can go well beyond in really powerful ways that, when we are operating at high and luxury, premium and luxury levels, not everyone can be privy to the work. But what I love about podcasting is so many more people can receive these kinds of potent messages and learnings and teachings. And that feels really good for me to have this platform whilst I operate at that luxury level where it becomes a more gated experience for the few, and this is what I love to give back in a bigger way. So thank you for giving your time so generously today, and I can't wait to see what you do next. I am watching with bated breath.
Back at you, girl. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Colette.